Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we're talking about something that I know a lot of people are interested in, which is how you can attract more candidates using proven methods. And today we have an absolutely amazing guest, which is James Whitelock. Hi, James. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. And of course, I'm joined by the magnificent Mike as well. How you doing, big guy?
Well, as you can see, a bit of a haircut going on, a bit of a thing there. We thought it was a 5, turned out it was a 4.
It's happened a lot. Maybe your communication skills aren't.
You know the difference between a good haircut and a bad haircut is 2 weeks, don't you? You know that.
Okay. Can you share today, Mike, why we've got James on the show? I mean, we're talking about candidates, but why else?
Well, we are, yeah. So James is a recruitment marketing specialist. That's the best way to sum him up. MD of Think in Circles marketing company, and the host of a fantastic podcast, I know because I've been on it, called, and I have to get the right room, Marketing Rules Podcast. There you go, get the right name for it. Okay, so in other words, he knows a lot about marketing. But the reason I wanted to come on the show, I know lots of people that know a lot about marketing, but the reason I wanted him to come on the show, he knows a particularly great deal about attracting candidates through marketing, which is only one strand of the things that he does, but it's an important strand because I believe that no matter what the market does, it's still always difficult to get great candidates. They don't seem to come on the market when there's a load around, and when there's not a load around, you ain't going to get them. So the ability to use marketing, particularly to attract them and start a conversation with them, to me, seemed to be a useful thing to bring on the show. So hence James. So welcome, James, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I've been following you for a long time, so it was a pleasure to be invited.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So, Kirsty, are you going to do something like impressive, like talk to us now? Is that the thing?
Yeah, so what I'm going to say is, as we go through, as always, you are welcome to pop any comments in. We've changed the show format, as I'm sure you're aware. It's a bit longer now, so we've got more time for questions and talkie time. Pop them in the comments. If for any reason you don't want to ask it publicly, or you're watching the recording of this, email me at kirsty@flair.co.uk, and I will either get James to answer it after the show if you're watching a recording, or I will bring it up anonymously online. So let's talk a little bit about
marketing. Should we talk about marketing?
Yeah, that might be an idea.
I mean, come on,
I completely went. I'm sorry.
Make your agency more attractive. I think that's where we're going, isn't it? You see, the thing is, right? You've got to say this before we go on, right? The thing is, James is a professional.
All that hours of prep that went into this, and then
hours and hours of prep. We met this morning for breakfast at 8 o'clock, and we've been working on the preparation since then. And then we get this. Yeah,
I'm sorry, guys. That is my problem. My brain went completely blank. Can we talk a little bit about how to make? Because a part of finding candidates is there are so many agencies out there. So how am I supposed to make my agency sort of the first choice? How am I supposed to make it attractive so that candidates want to work with me rather than the thousands of others that are out there?
We got there. That's cool. It's a difficult one, right? Because I think a lot of business, within recruitment, it is difficult to stand out from the crowd because you'll pretty much do the same thing, right? And one of the things that we always kind of talk to our clients around is this Madonna effect, or someone who changes their kind of appearance and reinvents themselves effect. And naturally, recruitment agencies kind of go through that as they scale up. But there's no reason why you can't kind of do this to reinvent yourself to look more appealing, right? And so this is what we call the Madonna effect. Usually, recruitment businesses go through it probably kind of every 5 years, right? And that kind of shift is always just generally done well and done through kind of and done properly and kind of well thought out, is going to give you just that little kind of something new, a shift that's going to give you something new to talk around. Okay, that can be driven by you've opened up a couple of new desks, you've just rebranded yourself from recruitment to talent acquisition or something like that, right? All these kind of new kind of terms that recruitment agencies love to be calling them, from outsourcing or professional services or whatever they want to call themselves. These can give you that little bit of kind of something new to talk around, and we're going to talk a lot around kind of communication generally today, but having that kind of going through that kind of process and thinking how you can kind of reinvent yourself every so often to keep yourself looking fresh.
Can I ask you on that then? I mean, does that as well then kind of imply that decent content is a useful thing to have? Because when we target clients, which is what we do, we don't really target candidates in Flair, but when we target clients, We like really good content that's got some zip to it. It's got a bit of zeitgeist to it. It's going to be attractive, and people are going to go, "Oh, that's interesting," because we've tackled the first challenge to get their attention. Are you suggesting then that, or is it possible that using content as well as the changes in your business or whatever, a rebrand to do it? Is that possible, or is that something
completely possible? And it all should be kind of aligned, right? And this is why, and I think we kind of agree on this, Mike, is the kind of seriousness that people need to take recruitment marketing within their business, that it isn't just making pretty pictures or anything like that. It's kind of giving a proper and actual strategy, and that strategy is always aligned to what the business is and business goals is and where the business is going. So if the business has pivoted to kind of slightly kind of reinvent itself, then the marketing has to pivot with it, and that will include the content that you are kind of distributing out there, whether that's copy like blogs, articles, that kind of thing, whether it's the videos, whether it's the audio, whether it's the short form TikTok videos you're doing. That always needs to kind of be aligned. So there's an alignment, and where your business goes, your marketing kind of goes with it, right? So yes, basically.
And I like to that some sort of measurement, because that's one of the things that we get a lot. You know, when I came on your show, I talked about this marketing journey that I've had, where I thought marketing was a complete and utter waste of time and money, because I built this really big business without spending a single penny on marketing. It's because I didn't really understand it. And all the marketers I talked to were really interested in doing things that looked nice and were pretty, but of very little practical value. And this, attracting candidates, is massively practical. If you can prove we do this thing and we get these candidates in, I mean, damn, that's got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, you know, measuring marketing used to be a bit of kind of finger in the air, right? And kind of we'll fudge it and see and kind of assume that it's working. It's easier than ever now to measure your marketing activity. You know, from the likes of Google Analytics, you can see what's quite easily, quickly coming into your site. From all the analytics that the social media channels kind of deliver you on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, you know, whatever basis, you can see what's kind of what's coming from where, who's attracted to what. The actual one of the big things that has kind of been a real bit of a game changer is what's called a UTM code, right? So anything you put out online is a little bit of code that sticks at the end of your URL. Okay, and it's called a UTM code. I can't remember what it stands for, but you can put in a specific code. That code could say LinkedIn marketing, something else, campaign number 2 or something. So you can tell the natural effect that someone is following and taking this journey all the way through that process, so they can go, this person's come from LinkedIn because this is a LinkedIn campaign. It says in the URL, it's come to our website. We can follow it. Then we can say, right, this person stayed on this website for 5 minutes. They looked at this page, this page, this page. And this is, you still don't know who they are at this point, but it kind of doesn't matter, right? You've had an effect. There is effect. And then you see, right, they sat on the application page for another couple of minutes, but then left. You know what that tells you? And if you see a trend in that, you think, okay, well, maybe there's something wrong at the end of that process that is going wrong. So it's basically, it's easy never to measure it. And it's some simple kind of tips like that.
I think that's interesting, because when we do Zoom webinars, we use the webinar feature of Zoom, which is different to the meeting feature, and you can track leads in it. So you can have as many URLs as you like, and it's, as you suggest, I think the basic click through to where they can register for the webinar, which is only one site, but then they've got this little bit of code at the end which differentiates where they've come from, so that you know. And one of the interesting things about that data is we can see how many people come through, and then we can see how many of those register. And we know, this is one small example, whether the quality of the thing that we've written about the webinar when they get to the site is actually any good or not, because we've got to get a 20 to 25% conversion rate. If it's below that, then there's something wrong with that writing, and we'll rewrite it. If it's above that, then we won't do anything with it, because it's what we want. And so I think there is this proactive element to marketing now, isn't there, where you have to look at the data and make decisions based on what you see.
So there's all kinds of stuff like that. So the UTM code is one. The kind of like Google Tag Manager is another one, which you can tag certain bits of content within the kind of the web page itself. So you can tell if someone has watched a video once they've landed on the page, those kinds of things. So you can tell, you get a bit more kind of interaction. There's also some really good kind of tools out there. There's one called Headlines, which we use a lot when, for instance, when you're creating an article or a blog. I know we're getting a little off kind of topic, but when you create, what this does is you can put your kind of title of the blog into Headlines, and basically it tells you if it's SEO friendly. And it says actually you need something that's a bit more in there, that's a bit more there's a bit more emotion you need to deliver in there. But again, that can all be used in conjunction with whatever your marketing strategy is, because you've already planned all this kind of stuff out, right? So you've decided that we need to kind of, we are going to look more professional. We're going to aim at we're going to be more like a search business. So we're going to pivot in that direction. So what is the stuff that's going to be more engaging to that audience? So you pivot over in that direction, and you do everything else. And there's tons of stuff over there that can help you understand that. The stuff around tracking is kind of almost what any good marketeer should be trying to kind of put in place anyway.
So with that, a lot of that is very, I don't want to say passive, because obviously it involves a lot of effort, but it's involving sort of not knowing. Is there a more active way to reach out and communicate with your candidates, or is it very much this allow it all to be out there and see what comes back to you?
Yeah, so kind of that, there's a lot of assumptions made around kind of how you should talk and communicate with candidates, right? And usually it's based on the fact that the worst thing you can ever do in any business is the way we've always done it, right? Which is the worst term, But with the varying kind of skill sets and the varying ages and the varying demographics of potentially the people that you want to bring in as a candidate, as a job seeker, you need to give them choice, right? The amount of times that on a daily basis, probably all of us are using things like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, other messenger platforms. We're kind of slightly kind of wedded to email within kind of the business arena because it's become a business tool, but personal use of email has kind of just dropped off a cliff. So expecting your candidates to be kind of checking their email all the time and getting back to you on email all the time is a bit of a misnomer. You need to give them choice, right? And that could just include having your flipping phone number on the website, right? Having that phone number within on the website clickable, right? That it can bring it up into WhatsApp, having a devoted kind of WhatsApp channel, or having it just that it opens up in whatever other thing, Skype, that kind of thing, right? But basically making those assumptions is the wrong way to go about it. So choice is the way to go about it. As I said, whether that is Slack, if you're in kind of an IT recruiter and you're kind of recruiting technical roles, Slack is maybe where you kind of what you might want to kind of use as that kind of channel, because potentially they're already there. But don't assume that for instance, a good example is I am terrible on the phone. I hate making phone calls, right? I think the seventh most thing that people do on a mobile phone now is make a phone call, and mine's way down below that, because I get anxiety about making a phone call. I'd rather use a chatbot or a messenger on a website. So having those kind of tools available to someone to have that kind of conversation, and that it's manned. Now, and again, these aren't scary bits of tools. They can be almost free in some cases, right? Again, not kind of mentioning, but if, for instance, on HubSpot, if you're a HubSpot user, you can get a messenger stuck on your website for free, right? They'll just do it for nothing. And you can create a very simple kind of sequence chatbot as well for free. So things like that,
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm just trying to build this up as we go. So if I'm playing back what I've just heard, so if you can get people to the website using lots of creative ways, content, posts that you've made, maybe even LinkedIn or social media advertising, I don't know, but get people there, then is the idea is to basically find out who they are, which none of the tools will tell you. You've got to put something on there, either a chat bot or a method that they can reach out to you very simply, or even a great piece of content. And if they want it, then they've got to basically tell you who they are. Is that the kind of strategy that we're building up here?
Yeah, I mean, you want to get what we might class as a unique identifier, right? Whether it's their name, their email address, or something that you can then kind of contact them back with. However, there are tools now out there that you can kind of track them even if you don't have a unique identifier. The cookie is the kind of the best kind of thing where you put a cookie on and you can then track them all around. This is when you kind of retarget them, as known as. So the adverts still say, so if you're clever enough, you could even put it like, we know you came to our website, this is where you suddenly get those kind of adverts on Facebook and things, because you've looked at someone's website. In recruitment, we're a bit backward in coming forward with that kind of that way of working. It's very kind of, it's old hat in online retail and things like that to do those kind of things. But we're a bit slow to kind of to bring it up, thinking that we're just going to turn people off that we do that. Well, actually, I think that you're going to turn more people on than you are actually turn people off. And so
let me just again, just clarify that, because I think I picked that up. So essentially, if you get someone to go to the website and they don't say decline cookies, so they're okay with cookies.
Yeah.
If that person goes into a social media platform using the same device, then you can then basically, I know there's some conditions attached to this, but essentially you can re-advertise to those people because they've been on your site.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it's called retargeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called retargeting. And actually there are now tools out there that you don't actually need a cookie as well. So it can pick up on other bits of information, because obviously cookies are quite there's all kinds of legislation coming around kind of dropping cookies. So there will be ways around that, and there'll be something else that kind of come. And I know there's businesses that I kind of, no, I've actually seen it, but say that they can actually kind of do cookieless tracking. So that'll be something that's coming.
Oh, that's impressive. That is impressive.
It is
okay.
indeed.
We have a picture now where we're drawing people in. We're hopefully trying to get to know who they are. And I know you want to go on and talk about other things, but this sounds quite complicated, and I'm sure it's not easy to set up. But once it's up, it's relatively easy to run, isn't it? I mean, it just runs in many cases.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be. You again, like we've talked about previously on the podcast. It's about you need someone to write it. It needs a good marketeer probably behind all that. You don't want to just kind of let it kind of run off on itself. But it wouldn't surprise me if in 2 or 3 years time, the things like that kind of AI tech that we're going to be talking about, I think kind of a little bit later on as well, we'll be able to kind of just manage all that on your behalf, and you have a good marketeer just kind of like as an overseer of all that kind of stuff, basically.
Going that way, isn't it?
It is. It feels that way. We're not there yet, though. And I know we're going to touch on AI a little bit, so we can kind of dig a bit deeper into that then.
We can save it for then. Yeah. Okay. So I think the area that I want to look towards next is this area of personalization. Now, with this comes, some people are like, they want to automate it. Some people think it needs to have the personal touch to it. Where do you sort of sit in that world?
Well, it needs to be personalized, right? And people who get kind of personalized messages aren't stupid. They know it's not kind of someone actually writing to them physically. Well, sometimes it might be, okay? That's still a legitimate style of personalization, is someone physically writing something to you. But for kind of for volume, you will need to kind of automate that somehow. But that's all based on data, okay, and based on good data. So the amount of kind of projects we sometimes run with clients where the volume of just bad data is in there is actually, I mean, it's going to do you more harm than good. You can't personalize with shit data. Basically, it just doesn't work, because a lot of the times, even if it's as simple as like a mass email or something like that, you'll just get kind of blacklisted and banned because you're sending out so many emails that are bouncing, right? So there's a process for personalization that needs to be done, which is around getting good data in the first place. Now that is a little bit harder when it comes to candidates, because in most cases, if we're talking to email, for instance, it's based on an email, and those emails may be Gmail accounts or Hotmail accounts or BT accounts or flipping whatever else kind of, and they might be really kind of old legacy accounts. So it's harder to verify those as being, whereas if someone works at a certain business, you can probably guess what that email is, right? So it's a little bit more difficult to kind of verify.
Well, we use hunter.io, which is, I don't know whether people use that, but it's very good, because if it doesn't know, it will guess for you.
Yeah.
In many cases,
it's right. Isn't it?
Yeah, Hunter's very good. .io, and there are others as well, I know, but you don't need to register for that one. You can just kind of use it, which I quite like.
So there's ways around it, really.
Yeah. It's difficult. On that, there's some research been done in America, but I think it still applies here, that on average, any particular job role you're recruiting for right now, about 20% of the people who've got that job title are actively looking for a new job, which means they're looking at job boards, they're looking at adverts. If you send an email or a LinkedIn message or an invitation to connect, they're going to respond because they're bloody looking for a job, right? And then that's interesting. They're easy to get to, really. They're not that difficult because they're open to it. But interestingly, there's another 20% that sit around that who are not active but are open. If you get to speak to them and put the right job in front of them, they'll consider doing it. And then there's a big debate around how you reach those people, because that's where there's a lot of money, and there's less competition, and there's less dropouts, and it's an easier process, right? The other 60% just aren't bothered. Obviously, you're not going to reach them. So have you got any thoughts or ideas how people could reach that second 20%?
Yeah, so it's that kind of old passive candidate kind of discussion, isn't it? The first place I would probably, I'll start with where you don't start. You don't start on LinkedIn, right? That person isn't on LinkedIn. The only people who are actively looking for a role are probably going to be on LinkedIn. Everyone else, apart from us recruiters and people in the recruitment space, are the ones that sit on it 24/7. Everyone else,
they're registered on it, aren't they? So they'll be on it, but they won't be active on it.
They won't be active on it, but they might not be getting notifications. They might not be getting kind of stuff dropping to. So that's the other thing, right? Because you've got to set all that stuff up. You've got to, and if they haven't touched it for 3 years, probably haven't done all that, right? Or it might be just going into spam or junk like that. So you steer clear. You steer clear of kind of LinkedIn. Now that's the kind of first place. So is then what you want to kind of try and do is understand the other things that are interesting to this kind of audiences. I'm a huge fan of not immediately putting a job in front of someone, but trying to kind of have some kind of connection and engagement with them first, and let them kind of come to you with the conversation. And that's basic inbound marketing. That's what we kind of say, is they instigate the conversation instead of you instigating the conversation. So that is based around things like decent content that's going to kind of resonate with them. It's going to the places where they may well be hanging out. And I know this kind of touches on the kind of communities aspect that we're going to talk about. So, right. So, for instance, it's always baffled me that of all the social networks and communities that are around, we seem wedded to LinkedIn, when there is the likes of Reddit and Discord and these other places where certain groups, again, if you're in IT, why you haven't got some kind of doing something on Discord, right? It baffles me, because that's where these kind of developers and kind of are hanging out, right? That's where they're doing that thing over there. Probably not on LinkedIn, right? So it's about kind of opening your kind of mind a bit, and talking to your candidates, finding out what they're doing, right?
It's focusing on them as people rather than them as job roles, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's getting beyond that kind of transactional kind of thinking around kind of recruitment, which again we can be kind of too wedded to, because again, not getting too political about kind of recruitment. It's a lot of times about just smashing the phones. You've got to make so many calls a day. It's all based on the calls, right? Well, no, there's actually, you're dealing with people, and we're very quick to say this is a people-driven business and people buy from people, but they don't buy from people who are just kind of like on the phone to them constantly like this, and just kind of like, there's more. There's a whole sphere that you need to kind of build out around this to attract people to you in the first place, which is based on the content that resonates with being in the places where they are. Right? Not necessarily where you think they are, giving them the options around how they can communicate with you. So everything we kind of talked about is just kind of building up this kind of ecosystem to just draw people into you, because you don't kind of come across as secondhand car salesmen. You come across as people who want to help their career.
Because we're not very keen on transactional relationships. I mean, they're necessary because the transaction is where you make money. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
But as you say, people don't like necessarily just to feel like a source of money. So one of the ways that we would pick up candidates back in the day was you get to know somebody in a client by whatever route, however route it is. Maybe they are in the middle 20% looking for a job, who knows? And then you wouldn't say this, but you find out who their mates are, because their mates are just as likely to move as you are. Partly that comes down to the experience that you give them. If you give them a really good experience, they're much more likely to recommend you to other people. But having, again, maybe something on YouTube or something that is of value to them, then there's a very good chance they'll point people towards it. So even if they're not on LinkedIn and they don't use Facebook and they hate social media in general, you can still get to them through other people or communities, which is what we're going to talk about a little later on now. But it is having that content or something which will draw them in, which is more than just, do you want a job? Because the answer is, well, no, I don't, as a matter of fact. End of story.
And that's completely the case. And actually, to be honest, the kind of job is secondary to everything else you kind of want to be putting out there, right? We when we're talking to businesses around what they should be posting, for instance, on social, it's kind of like a 1 in 4, 1 in 5. The job is the one, and everything else is something else, right? These channels that you're using aren't job boards. Okay, and so don't treat them like job boards, because they're not set up to be used like a job board, right? They're set up for you to add value and to be engaging, and to be there, to be present, and to kind of talk. And that doesn't mean just LinkedIn. That means everything else that we've kind of talked about. If it's Facebook, if it's TikTok, where your candidates are, go to where they are, and then kind of act in the kind of act appropriately in those environments, basically. Yeah, so it all kind of ties in, right? Yeah.
A very specific question. And supposing somebody's watching this and thinking, TikTok, yes, I don't use that. Right? I know how to shoot a video on a phone, got that. Yeah, I can do that. Technically, I know how to do that. How the heck could they find a candidate who's on TikTok? What would they need to do to go to that process to actually find that candidate?
Well, I mean, there are kind of search tools for TikTok and on TikTok itself. However, if you're going to go out there kind of like almost like a search and selections kind of style, trying to headhunt someone who's on TikTok, you're probably going to kind of fall flat on your face, right? We're big proponents of using the right channel for the right cause, for the right thing. So TikTok, you'll find most recruiters, and probably accurately, use it more for employer branding, right? That this is a snapshot of what they do within their business. Okay, if you're going to go there proactively trying to headhunt people, I think you're probably going to fall a bit flat on your face. I don't think it's going to work like that. So that's how we. Yeah, I wouldn't unless TikTok changes at some point and you can give, you can kind of just glean more from it, and it's not just kind of a bit more kind of irreverent as it sits at the minute. Then that doesn't mean you can't kind of use it to kind of put out there kind of candidate attracting type content, but I wouldn't use it as a kind of a headhunting tool.
What about other social platforms like Facebook, for example, and advertising on social? Because advertising is great in the sense that if people are there, clearly the advertisers that run the site want you to get to them, because that's how you make money and come back for more. So what's your feeling on using advertising to target candidates?
Oh yeah, totally kind of down with that. You can do that. And actually something like Facebook is a good place to kind of test that, because it's actually pretty inexpensive to run adverts on Facebook, and you've got all kinds of options, from pushing specific content in front of a demographic, as opposed to pushing more generic kind of brand awareness stuff in front of, so you've got quite an option of things to kind of to advertise potentially, unlike maybe where in the Google AdWords, where you're kind of, it's all based on what you're writing, the advert copy itself. Facebook gives you options to say, right, do you want to push this type of content, that kind of content, who you're trying to get, and you can kind of break it. And you can spend 30, 40 quid on an advert and get something kind of that's probably worthwhile from it. That's yeah. So it's
and you can also retarget on there as well, can't you? So you can run an advert, say on YouTube, and basically it says at the beginning, a dog whistle, hey, look, you should only watch this video if you're XYZ. And I wouldn't bother. You can watch it, but I wouldn't bother in you. And the reason they do that, if you see that, is that because they can then retarget people who've watched it for more than 30 seconds, say, or whatever. And then they know the people who are watching are exactly the people they said at the beginning of the advert. So then they can retarget and put a lot more money into a much smaller group, obviously. But they're the kind of people that they want, and that is relatively cheap to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it isn't. It is pretty kind of inexpensive to go down that route. Unlike something like Google AdWords, which is kind of huge kind of Goliath of a bidding system, and you've got to put in so much money to just kind of get in the right place at the right time. And the good thing about the kind of things like Facebook is like the retargeting that we were talking about before. If someone has accepted cookies as the kind of technology sits at the minute, you can then retarget them on something like Facebook. So when they get onto Facebook, they will get an advert saying, for your brand, for a specific job, because it could be related to the job. It could be similar jobs or that kind of thing. You can kind of deal with that. Yeah. And again, that kind of falls into personalisation a little bit as well, right? Because you're kind of capturing those details. You know where they've been on the website, so you can kind of deliver relevant personal content, even if it's not their name, or kind of say it says, "Hi, James." That is possible, right? All of that kind of stuff is possible, but
personalized to their interests, I suppose,
exactly,
rather than to their name.
Yeah,
or anything
exactly.
Like that. Okay, and then I know we mentioned it earlier, and I know it's something that definitely has zeitgeist at the minute, which is AI and leveraging AI. Everybody's talking about how AI has this space here, there, and everywhere. Does AI have a space in attracting candidates?
Yeah, and I think it's only going to kind of get kind of more and more kind of relevant and prevalent within recruitment. Recruiters aren't going to be replaced by ChatGPT or anything like that, but there's a couple of different ways you can come of it. And I know the conversations that we're having with some of our clients is like, how can we use this within our business, and how does this, what could it kind of do for us? At the minute, things like ChatGPT are pretty limited in how and what you could kind of do with them. One of the things that we wrote about this on the website, and one of the things that is quite a nice idea, and it isn't really kind of, it's slightly kind of talent attraction kind of related, is using it to help candidates and job seekers prepare for interviews, prepare to pay. So you can get them, you can kind of basically put in all kinds of questions into ChatGPT, say like, how do I prepare for a job or with this job title? What are the questions I should ask at an interview for a job with this job title, right? And so you can prep them, right? And you can almost kind of get them to prep themselves, right? There's no ways in where you couldn't have a lot of the kind of website developers in recruitment and kind of CRM developers are building in AI into there with using ChatGPT and other things. You can kind of basically, you could build out a widget that on your website that says, prepare yourself for this job, right? How do I prepare yourself? Type, and it could potentially be preloaded, and you can kind of like, and it would be a slightly different response every time, because the job search would be slightly different, the job title would be slightly different, pay might be, it could be seniority level, and you could say like, how do I prepare? There could be a button, right? Eventually at some point, how do I prepare for this job? What do I need to do? What should I have on my CV? And the AI then just kind of feeds this back to you and say, right, you need this on your CV, right? So that, not necessarily attracting talent, but once they're there, it's a great way to kind of retain them and to give them that kind of empowerment that they can then kind of give themselves the best opportunity to land this job. So something like that, I think, could work really well.
It's so interesting. I would never have thought to use AI in that way, but there are so many people who, particularly if you have headhunted somebody who's been in a business for a long time, or maybe has been promoted through, hasn't done a lot of the job hopping that I think is becoming more and more common, interviews are nerve-wracking for them. So that kind of thing could really help add some support to them around that. Yeah. So I really like that.
Yeah, and it's quite a simple thing. I don't think it's particularly difficult, but if it's kind of, yeah, I think it's just a really good potential kind of usage of it, and a practical usage of it as well.
Yeah, Paul Rawson, thank you for commenting. Really likes that. It's a great idea. I think so. I think Paul.
I'm gonna shout out to Paul, because I think we had a discussion around kind of how you can use AI for job seekers. So this is kind of, I think this is based on a conversation that I had with him, and we had this kind of, yeah. So
we should have invited. I like that. It would have been cheaper, almost certainly. We don't pay. Yes, just that was a joke. Can I just go back around? I know that we could spend probably the whole show on AI, and it's still early days yet. It's developing, isn't it? Moving its way. I'm interested in this kind of getting to candidates through third parties, either influencers or candidate communities, right? Can we just expand upon that a little bit? Because I think there's a few interesting things in there, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of influencer marketing is something that I bang on about a lot, right? And again, something that other industries do really well, but in recruitment we do absolutely just nothing around that. Really, we don't do much around that. And if you did want to use, coming back to our kind of TikTok conversation and finding candidates, maybe the best way to get in front of the people, the candidates and job seekers you want to be in front of, is to go down the influencer route and find someone who's got a great network, who's in the space that you want to kind of target, who's already there, who knows all the technology, knows how to put a TikTok video together and does it regularly, and you align with them, basically influencer marketing, and help them to get you in front of their audience, basically. And a good example of this is in the education space, right? There's a lot of teachers kind of on TikTok. There's a lot of educators on TikTok. TikTok itself has got its own kind of almost kind of education platform, right? So if you're an education recruiter, or you're a recruiter for teachers, right? Why you're not aligning yourself, finding the people who are making the most noise, who are aligned with your kind of visions and values in that space, and then reaching out to them and going, listen, we really like what you're doing. We want to kind of somehow work together with you, whether it's simply as just saying this, that you're being sponsored by them, supported by them, whether it is kind of having them on as a maybe to, I don't know, edit your TikTok channel for a couple of weeks or something like that, right? Very simple, doesn't have to necessarily even cost anything. But why we have never kind of thought outside the box and gone down that route with influencer marketing, really, this is basically me just saying, why is no one reaching out to me? Because to pay me to get in front of, you know what I mean? But that kind of thing is really kind of,
we use that here. Obviously, you're on our show now, and there's a very good chance, not that we promised you this or said this to you, but there's a very good chance someone listening to this now or the recording will think, oh wow, perhaps like to know a bit more about what James has got to say for himself, and we'll reach out to you. We get it a lot, right? We don't get paid for it. We don't get any reward for it. We don't monitor it, but we get feedback a lot. And the same way, when I go on someone else's podcast, I get a lot of inquiries, right? And that's a sort of an influencer network. Obviously, you can do a lot more than that if you go very specific to people. But I choose people to come on the show who work with recruiters, and I try and get on the shows of people who work with recruiters for that very same reason, because they're our shared client base, aren't they?
Exactly.
And what about the communities other than, say, social media communities? Are there other places that people can go?
Well, it's an old adage: if it doesn't exist, build it, right? And it's easier than ever to build your own kind of communities. I'm sure we've all got WhatsApp, and you're all part of WhatsApp groups, and now WhatsApp communities, which is a new kind of feature on there as well now. So why people aren't kind of like trying to kind of, curate content and have those kind of WhatsApp kind of communities? Costs nothing, can be done on your laptop, doesn't have to be done from your phone. And you can kind of get everyone there, be the kind of the community supervisor and the community editor, and have editorial control, push your potential content out to everybody in that community, and start those conversations.
It's interesting you say that, because one of my clients, in fact, two of them now, have got Mighty Networks. Mighty Networks is an online kind of community. You can build a network in Mighty, like Six Circles. It's the same kind of thing. And it was built for clients originally, but now they found some of the people who've joined it as clients, and they're focusing on those. They're now actually placing as candidates, which is like a weird thing they didn't predict, really, because it's the content and the community that brings them in, and then who they're going to go to if they want a job. So
it's and it's easier than ever, right? So I'm a member of a couple of communities on WhatsApp that started off as WhatsApp groups, and then have been built out into, the community manager then built out a website for that community, right? Because you can buy kind of off the shelf, social media chat kind of platforms, basically off the shelf. So it's moved from that onto that. Okay, so it's some of the conversation starts on WhatsApp, then it goes, oh, why don't we continue this here, and we can kind of have a kind of one-to-one community, and there's that, and so it is easier than ever, right, to do that kind of thing for very low costs, to kind of manage these communities, have your own communities. So my friend Jamie Hickman, who kind of he's got these kind of online WhatsApp communities that's then moved on to an actual kind of web-based, app-based kind of another app where you can, it's a bit more kind of richer conversation.
That's grows amazingly. I'm thinking of trying to get him to come on the show, because I'm part of that. That's come from nowhere. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And I speak to him quite a lot. Jamie, we've had a kind of conversation around, what do you do with that community once you've got it? Because he's been so successful that he's got hundreds and hundreds of people on there, or a global kind of like talent acquisition kind of network. Where do you go from that? So he's almost kind of victim of his own success. Now, I'm not saying every recruiter is going to be that, but if you've got kind of like 50 or so people in these kind of WhatsApp groups, and you're initiating the conversation, the only thing that always kind of holds some recruiters back is like, oh, what if they start talking to each other? What if they start kind of, there's this mistrust, which generally kind of comes across yeah, exactly. Right. There's all that kind of comes across. So, but, I think that if you're adding value and people are getting something from it, then you've got nothing to kind of to worry about. And then also in the end, when it comes to the candidates, they're probably already in about 5 other agencies' databases anyway, right? Just they're not doing anything with them. You're the one that's kind of trying to build a community to offer more value. So that's already putting you in an advantage at that point.
And again, another benefit of this community thing is if you just get one person as the entry point, maybe from LinkedIn or from they apply to you or whatever, really, if your community is strong enough and you can get them in it, they'll invite other people in. They'll invite people like them. I think it's an incredibly effective way to reach people who are in that second 20%, the inactive but open group, because they come, and then it's your chance then to be able to get a conversation with them about a piece of work that you've got or an opportunity. So,
and one of the big advantages there is that you're always in contact with them, right? So you don't have to worry about necessarily sending out emails every 3 months to kind of reactivate them. They're in this WhatsApp group. There's probably stuff going on in that WhatsApp group, so they're always aware of who you are.
I'm so sorry. So the gardener's just turned
You
on.
can't hear it, Mike. It's okay. You can't hear it.
It's fine. So those are the kind of things. You have a bit more control over it. You can kind of control your brand. You can constantly kind of have that conversation going. so you don't have to kind of do so much of the other stuff if you've got this kind of active. I'm saying WhatsApp. It could be on Slack. It could be Discord. It could be Reddit. It could be one of these other community-based kind of platforms.
So very good if you're a niche provider. If you're a generalist, almost impossible to do that, really.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly.
In a niche, you should have a community.
But you know, as the Americans tend to butcher it, you know, the riches are in the niches, right? You know, so.
Oh, bless them.
Bless their little tiny hearts. Bless them. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think we're coming to the end now, unfortunately, because James, I could listen to you speak about this for days, and I'm sure we could probably carry on for another hour and a half. So, in a second, we're going to come to you for the usual top tip, because there's been so many things that you shared today that have added so much value. For me, the biggest thing that I'm taking away is thinking of them as individuals and where they hang out, kind of not work related, which I loved and stuff like that. So in a second, we're going to come to you for the top tip thing that viewers should do to get started. But before then, Mike, let's talk about who we've got next week. We've got Hisham, I believe.
We do have the marvelous Hisham Azuz, and we were talking when I was on his show a wee while ago, and we were talking about kind of what makes recruitment companies successful. And of course, he knows a shed load of recruitment companies. He talks to them all the time, interacts with the leaders. And I know a reasonable amount as well. So we thought it to be a classical gas to come together and just share all of this. So we're going to try and pick out 5 or 6 things that you just see in successful recruitment companies. They just seem to always be there. And it's based on our not empirical research, but research nonetheless. So that's going to be a really great event. Really looking forward to having him on the show.
Yeah, so that will be on the 8th of June. And next week on our YouTube channel, we're going to be talking about time management as well. So there's a couple of things that are coming out for you guys to help out. So, James, as we said, we've been through a lot today. There's been some really good tips and things. But from your point of view, what's somebody who's watching this, what's the first thing that they should do in order to get the ball rolling on getting more high-quality candidates?
Well, Mike slightly stole this earlier in the show, but I'm going to kind of reiterate it anyway. Is around talking to your candidates, right? And they're the best form of intel, right? Whether it's referrals, whether it's if there are any roles going at the current job that they're possibly thinking of leaving, all of that is the best place, and they'll know people of similar kind of similar to them. So if you have to go through your database, think of the best quality candidates you've got, you're already placing, talk to them, and they're basically your best kind of form of intel to similar candidates. Intel on companies that are potentially hiring, that they're potentially leaving. So kind of talk to them and not treat them as a number. Right?
They'll also tell you, if you talk to enough of them, if you do want to get in the content route, which is a strand I don't think you can ignore. It's not the answer, but it's part of the answer. They'll tell you what they're interested in. Mm-hmm. They'll tell you the sort of things that would draw them in that you could then use for advertising on social media or whatever you want to do, or even an email campaign if that's the route you want to go. But I think that there is, because of the transactional nature, are you open for a job? No, click onto the next. We don't get a lot of time to actually really understand their world. And I understand why not, by the way, I get it, especially if you're on a KPI, which is number of calls made. However, a little investment in somebody who's a little bit chatty Cathy, who you think is perhaps somebody that mixes in a community, or is, some people are just connectors, aren't they? They're just they're that way inclined. To talk to them to find out what the heck is going on and try to get them involved, either just to give you their ideas or maybe be part of an interview. We had a podcaster on, Rob Tyson, a few weeks ago, and he gets people onto his podcast. And he says he places a fair amount of them as well, weirdly. But he knows he gets people coming to him because he's niched up in an area which is mining, and he is the number one podcaster. And so if you're looking for a job and you listen to his show, going to go to him. So, but he gets his ideas from the people he talks to, from the community he serves.
It's that thing you always say, Mike, everything that you need to know in order to make your business successful is locked up in the minds of your clients, and candidates are obviously recruiters' clients.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Fantastic. Okay. So as always, it's about time to round up now. So first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to you, James. It's been amazing having you on the show. You've added a lot of value, and I know we've had some great interaction from people as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure being here.
Mostly because of me, though, not because of this
one. Well, I didn't want to say it, but
yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And and thank you to you, Mike, for being here with your short haircut as always.
Yeah, and if only next time we could do a bit more prep, and then you don't freeze up. And
it's my first day back out. It's my first time back after holiday. You know, I'm mentally on a sunbed. That's all it is. That's all it is. And just before we leave, James, if anybody's watching this, like the recording or watching it now, thinking they want to ask a few more questions or something, can they just connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn, or either Google Thinking Circles and they'll find ways to connect us, or just kind of LinkedIn, or
check out the show as well. Do check out the podcast.
Oh yeah, have a look. Yeah, have a listen to the Marketing Rules. Mike, your show goes live next week. So
really? Well,
yeah,
okay.
I don't know how we managed that. It's like it's like we timed it,
Professional at the very end.
So very, very started. Okay, so once again, thank you so much to everybody for watching, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thanks, Kirst.